Hi everyone, lovely to be here. I'd like to say I'm a walker like Andrew, but if I get hold of a mic, it's karaoke, it's bad news, so we'll save that for later. So my name's Carly, I'm the Chief Executive of PECT. I'm going to speak to you for just 5 minutes, just a little bit about the work that we do, and then Anthony's going to talk a bit more about our business support offering, or one of our business support offerings, Investors in the Environment. So the reason I'm talking to you will become clear because I'll talk a little bit about the range of work that we do. Because we do so many different things, often something will resonate. You might think, oh, actually, that links a bit to what we do, or something that we'd like to get involved in. So if you bear with me and look at the range of things that we get involved in, hopefully it will all start to make sense. So PECT is a charity. We've been around for 30 years. Predominantly, it was set up initially to work in Peterborough and house the environmental ambitions of Peterborough. Particularly over the last 10 years, we've worked much more on a regional, national and international front. So we work in lots of areas. We're not bound by geography. We don't have to just work in Cambridgeshire. So lots of the work we do spans lots of different areas. And because sustainability is such a huge topic, we get involved in all sorts of things. So our vision is about sustainable places. For us, that means a healthy natural environment. It means communities that are involved in their area. It means health and well-being improved for everybody, and crucially it means resource use that's responsible. So in our charity, we've got a charity and a trading arm. Between us there's about 40 people. We work on all sorts of things, as I've mentioned. We've grown by about a third in the last 12 months, and I think that speaks to some of the things that we've heard already about this agenda. People are looking for solutions and they're looking for delivery. And it's really, I think from COP, we saw this shift from ambition to action. And it's that action that people don't necessarily know where to go to and what to do. So that's a lot of the focus of our work. So we are delighted to work alongside Joe and the team on Eastern New Energy. We manage the grants element of that Joe talked about. We've got a whole range of different work on responsible resource use. Anthony's going to talk about investors in the environment. We also deliver a programme in Lincolnshire about business support. And then there's 2 projects there, which I'll just mention briefly. They're 2 international projects. Blueprint is about moving to a circular economy. So that's about helping local authorities in the UK and France to make that shift towards circular economy. It's also about working with residents and improving skills for the future on circular economy, demystifying it a bit. We work on Cool Food, which is about reducing the carbon intensity of food, particularly in hospitals and school settings, so working with caterers to plan meals so that they're less carbon intensive as well. These pictures are always the ones that kind of bring it to life, so we do a lot around the natural environment. Obviously, when we're thinking about the issues that we face, we've got huge challenges around climate change, around biodiversity loss and around pollution. And lots of those solutions, as Andrew said, they're nature-based solutions that we need. We need things that don't solve a problem over here and cause another one over here. So lots of the work we do is around natural environment. We do tree planting schemes that corporates, businesses, schools, community groups can come and get involved in. That has multiple benefits. People feel the individual health and wellbeing benefit for that, but they're also giving back. They're doing something in their community for now and for the future as well. We work on a number of pollinator schemes, so helping to improve habitat for pollinators. And we also help to empower local communities to do things for themselves. So we're running a project at the moment where we're helping communities to work on a local nature recovery plan so that they can see where they could best put their efforts into making their local environment much better for nature. So that might be about putting ponds in, it might be about creating an orchard, that kind of thing. So we help with the support structure to put those things in place. Health and wellbeing I mentioned. Some of these cross over. It's never a neat kind of 4 areas of work, so lots of the things mixed together. We do quite a lot around arts and culture, around raising awareness. Lots of the work we do with health and wellbeing, unfortunately, is around fuel poverty. So obviously with energy prices increasing, more and more people are moving into that area where they'd be classified as being in fuel poverty. So we've got lots of work that we do across the country on that, and that's about helping people to improve energy efficiency at home. We can sometimes get funding to put in measures in place, small measures and bigger measures, and also sometimes we can provide some debt relief for people that are really struggling. So a whole range of work that we do on that front. Also around sustainable transport, so helping around active lifestyles, encouraging people to use more sustainable transport and finding out what the barriers are to doing that as well. And then our last kind of area of work is education. So a really rewarding area of work that we do, obviously helping to instill these values, that's my alarm, instill these values in the future generations. And that's about, we've got lots of services that we run around food and nutrition, but also a whole service to schools that can help them embed sustainability in a way that makes sense for them in a kind of flexible framework. So that's a little bit about PECT, but I'm around all day. It'd be great to talk to you if there's any questions you want to follow up on. Thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I'm one of the people that Andrew identified at the start of his presentation. I haven't been out for 2 years. Quite excited. Real people, live event and all that. I'm actually quite nervous as well. So I was thinking about that. So if there's a willing volunteer in the audience that doesn't mind shouting out, maybe 5-10 seconds into my presentation, you're on mute, I think that'll help normalise things, and I'll feel a little bit more comfortable. So I'm not going to say too much about me, particularly because I was introduced as, I think the word specialist was used, and I'm going to destroy my credentials now by admitting I didn't get full marks on Andrew's quiz. But I am a project manager at PECT. Work on a number of different projects. You've heard from Joe about the Eastern New Energy. It's me and my team that actually facilitate the grant scheme. So we're working on Eastern New Energy, and we have a number of other business support programs that we're also running at the moment that fall under my remit. I'm actually here on behalf of the investors in the environment team, so I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about that particular initiative. Just in terms of what I should put my glasses on. In terms of what I'm going to be talking about, Andrew kind of talked about kind of where we're trying to get to. You know, what's the ultimate aim? Where we're trying to be a few years down the line. Sorry, I'm a walker. I probably should hold on to here. They're going to jump around the side. Joe quite rightly pointed out that most of you will have started that journey, whether you realise it or not, and lots of you will be in between. So I'm going to kind of be talking about how can you kind of continue that journey, how can you progress, and how can you have some positive impacts. Listening to Andrew and Joe, I'm going to potentially be repeating some stuff that you've already heard. I'll try and minimise that, so don't be alarmed if I don't talk to every slide or if I miss any of the bullet points out. But in short, I'm going to kind of cover some stuff around why the business case for reducing environmental impacts and adopting what we call an environmental management system. Talk about some of the key drivers. Talk about some of the benefits. Who should adopt an environmental management system and why? And also talk a little bit about measuring and monitoring resources. Going to do that fairly quickly because quite a bit of it's already been covered. Going to tell you about the investors in the environment scheme, and then if you've got any questions, we can take those at the end. So, reducing environmental impacts. You know, what are the key drivers for that? Again, as I say, we've already heard from Andrew and Joe. They've already picked up on some of these. Some of the others I might build on. So you're probably aware that there's been an awful lot in the media over the last couple of years, in particular, really raising people's awareness about resource scarcity and about climate threat. And that's a big issue. That's a global issue that we all have got to contribute to addressing. Some of the other ones that are on the list there, a bit more specific to maybe you at the business level, rising costs. I'm not going to talk about energy bills. I'm sure most of you are probably seeing the impact of that already. Andrew talked about supply chain pressures. There's definitely a changing marketplace. I've worked supporting businesses on this agenda for 20 years, and the last year or two, these pressures are significantly increasing. As Andrew already said, it's that pressure is going to grow significantly, even more going forward. We haven't really talked about legal compliance, not particularly, but that's something else that's may potentially drive you to reduce your environmental impact and potentially adopt an environmental management system. Lots of people think that legal compliance, environmental law I'm talking about here, tends to apply more to kind of big manufacturing and engineering companies, but actually every single one of you in the room, if you run a business, there will be some kind of requirement for you to comply with environmental law. So you'll all be producing waste, you'll all have to comply with something called the duty of care. In terms of the benefits, again, these have been touched on already. The big one, the sort of initially anyway, is the opportunity for you to cut operational costs, so to reduce the cost of doing what you do. Certainly some of the things that we try to encourage the businesses that we work with through Investors in the Environment to think about are these opportunities to improve their reputation, so potentially to win more work and access new markets. And again, we've already heard, suppliers are asking questions. Some of you may win some of your work through tendering to local authorities, for example. Now, these questions have been asked in the past, but they're going to be asked even more going forward with a much more sort of rigorous investigation in terms of what you're doing. So there's an opportunity through adopting an environmental management system to kind of sort of dig into some of those benefits as well. I think Andrew actually touched on this around the issue around staffing. And there's been plenty of surveys in the last 12 months or so that are showing that, again, graduates in particular being attracted to go and work for businesses that have a strong sustainability focus. And it's not just about attracting new staff, it's about retaining your current staff. Everybody's awareness has been raised in the last couple of years, and people are starting to think more about where they work and how they feel about the business that they work for. Who is an environmental management system appropriate for? The quick answer to that question is potentially everybody. But essentially, if you're looking to adopt a more structured approach to managing your environmental impacts and to realise those benefits, that's what an environmental management system offers you, that structured approach to bring everything together. We heard talk about sort of the low-hanging fruits, and you can certainly achieve a lot without having any kind of system in place. But if you really want to complete that journey that Andrew was talking about, this is potentially the framework for you to do that. So whether you're a small business, whether you're in the public sector, whether you're a larger organisation, this is appropriate to you. And third sector's on there. We're in the third sector at PECT, and we have our own environmental management system. It's called the Investors in the Environment Scheme. I'll tell you about it in a minute. I think I can move on from that one. So just a couple of things to finish up on that. So in terms of first steps, is one of the first things that you sort of will be aiming to achieve when you start your journey to adopt an environmental management system really is about understanding your impacts to the fullest extent. And again, Andrew and Joe have already touched on some of these, but certainly understanding your resource use, the waste that you're creating and what you do with that, and thinking about your carbon emissions. Equally important is thinking about your team, so who works for your organisation, what roles are going to be need to be involved on your journey to net zero, and what skills are going to be required, because undoubtedly there's going to be some upskilling required along the way. And as Joe said, there's a number of different organisations and initiatives here today that can help you with that. Andrew's already said this. You can't manage what you don't measure. So I was just going to give a really quick example around energy use. Obviously, you need to understand how much energy you're consuming. Now, you can do that to a degree by looking at your energy bills, and then you can start to record and monitor your meter readings. Ideally on a monthly basis. Quick question for you. Do you have half-hourly data? Recommend you go back and check, because we frequently come across businesses when we ask them that question who either say no or don't know, then they get their energy bills out and they're paying for it. Half-hourly data is exactly what it suggests. It gives you an energy use profile every half hour of the day. If you're a high energy user, so for example in the manufacturing sector, that can be really, really useful, really helpful in terms of managing and reducing your energy use. One thing I would say when it comes to measuring and monitoring particularly energy, well actually any of the resources that you're using, and that's not to focus just on raw consumption, so not just the total amount that you're using, because things change. Most businesses reduced their energy use in 2020. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they were particularly energy efficient in that year. It meant that most of them weren't using their offices and people weren't going into work as frequently. So you want to think about measuring your energy or your resource use against something meaningful to your organisation. So that might be the number of people that you employ, that might be the floor space for your premises, or it might be the number of widgets that you produce on a monthly basis. So it's something we need to think about. I'm going to move on because I'm conscious of time and I haven't actually talked to you about the investors in the environment scheme. So at PECT, we've been working in this space now for about 25 years. Investors in the environment is the third iteration of our business support program. It's been running now for about 10, 11 years. And I'm just going to talk you through the basics of that, really. So in terms of what an environmental management system covers, what it involves, what you see on the screen there, in our humble opinion, most businesses are going to want to look at these key topics. Now, one of the really important things about whatever you decide to do after today is about making whatever option you choose, whatever journey you take is appropriate to you. And one of the things that we do try and do at Investors in the Environment is make our offer kind of bespoke to you. And so thinking about what you do and what your impacts are. So I won't go through the list in graphic detail. I'm going to have to come across here because I can't read that on the screen. So I'm just going to give you an idea here of some of the resources that we've got. So what we try and do in Investors in the Environment is try and take some of the pain out of it for you by providing you with templates alongside the... So giving you templates to help you sort of have that impact a little bit quicker. So very, very quickly, just thinking about some of them. One of the first things that you're going to want to do is adopt an environmental policy. So that both that internal and external statement of intent, that commitment, and we can help you with that. So we can help you produce an environmental policy. You may want to talk to your staff and get their view on sustainability, net zero, and you sort of do that through a staff engagement survey. And again, we've got templates to help you with that. We've got a travel survey, so if you want to start talking to your staff about how they travel to work and thinking about how you can reduce your impact there, if it's possible, we've got things to help you with that. So there's a long list there. We'll make sure this presentation is available so that you can have a look at this at your leisure, so to speak. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to talk you through the IIE journey. Thank you. So there are 3 accreditation levels that we take organisations through: bronze, silver and green. We don't call it gold, we call it green for obvious reasons. It's a step-by-step approach. The idea behind it is that each accreditation level allows your organisation to set an achievable target and establish a pathway of continual improvement. Now, achievable doesn't mean setting an easy target. It should be challenging, it should be a stretch, and we'll help you to identify what that should look like. Again, so just very quickly, I'm going to come across here again. So I do apologise, I should have put my glasses on. I can't read from the screen. So the bronze level, just picking out some of the highlights on here. So we'll certainly be expecting you to have developed and finalised your environmental policy at this stage. Sorry, thank you. You'll certainly be setting up a monitoring process for your key resources. So again, we'll help you to identify what they are, but typically that's going to include, certainly going to include energy, it's probably going to include waste, it's probably going to include business mileage. We'll help you to identify what the key messages are that you need to get out to both your own staff and the suppliers that you want to, assuming that you want to let them know what you're doing. And we would expect you to undertake your first environmental project. So that's the bronze level. There's no sort of definitive rule as to when you need to get to this particular level, but as a general guide, we're looking to accredit people on an annual basis. So roughly speaking, sort of 12 months. You can do it quicker. You may have already done quite a lot of this, and you'd be able to jump straight into a high level. Moving on to the I'm moving on to the silver level. So the commitments start to get a little bit higher now. So we're looking for some kind of demonstrable progress towards your targets. A key one for me is this second point here, where you've actually identified a percentage of your staff that are going to be trained and engaged in the process. So your commitment to upskilling your staff. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to do this on your own as one person in an organisation. The whole organisation is going to have to come together to make it happen. And we would expect, for example, to have a travel plan in place and communicate it to your staff with potentially with some incentives in there for them to reduce their impact and make their journey to work a little bit more sustainable. And then green level, it's described here as kind of full EMS and net zero preparation. So again, certainly looking for you to have adopted at least 3 very specific environmental projects, started to calculate your carbon emissions. That will be scope 1 and 2, going back to Andrew's earlier presentation. And started to look at the potential for some carbon offsetting activities as well. So I'm going to finish. I think I'm almost up. I'm just going to finish with a couple of quick case studies. The first one is, it says clinical. We're doing an awful lot of work at the moment with veterinary practices. We've had a really big uptake with them over the last 12 months. We've engaged with, I think it's the British Veterinary Association, have I got that right? And they've kind of encouraged a lot of their membership to look at investors in the environment as an opportunity for them. So we've been working with quite a lot of vets. And here's just an example of some of the things that they've been able to achieve. They've reduced their carbon footprint by 30% since 2018. We've been able to reduce waste. And they've also, and this is something I haven't mentioned, one of the other things that we do encourage our members to do is to look for the opportunities in the local community. These kind of CSR, corporate social responsibility projects. And that could be all sorts of things. I mean, that could be a tree planting exercise. It could be about going into local schools and talking about what you're doing as an organisation to reduce your impacts in terms of sustainability. Second example, so this is from an office environment. They've managed to achieve a 30% reduction in their carbon emissions. That's focused on building, energy and staff travel. One would assume that as they go forward, they will start to look at other things. Reduce their electricity usage by 44%, water usage by 16%. They've installed EV charging points, and the list goes on. One thing I didn't mention, sorry, I should have mentioned it here. You'll notice here some logos. When you get accredited, you get the use of this logo, so you can use this on your website and your marketing material. You can put it in your email footers, and that's just your opportunity to externalise the journey that you've been on and what you've achieved. That's the one on the left there. The one on the right, just very briefly, every year we have an annual awards week where we acknowledge the really high achievers on the programme. So this particular, the vets here, was identified as a sustainability influencer. I think from memory that's because that particular individual, that particular practice was the catalyst for getting lots of other veterinary practices involved in the scheme. I think, apologies if I've rushed a little bit there, but you got the general idea. I think the important thing, just to echo a point that Joe made, is there are lots of opportunities for you here today. From a very personal perspective, I'm not remotely precious about which organisation you turn to for help. I think the really important thing is that you make a commitment and you start that journey. Because going back to what Andrew was talking about at the beginning of the session, now is the time to take action. And as a sustainability professional, I'd just be fantastic to see you all doing something. So, but we'll be here all day along with everybody else. And questions, I guess.
Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you so much. Yes. Can I ask a quick question, please? So, we've talked about carbon quite a bit. We've talked about sustainability as well. Can you so obviously carbon is a part of environmental sustainability. And it's sort of easier, it's the more quantifiable part of sustainability. Can you talk about the rest of it, which is hard to quantify and hard to pin down?
We're on the spot now. Sorry. Do you have a specific example in terms of what you're thinking? I mean, I agree with you that certainly if you think about certainly energy use is the obvious, particularly at the moment with energy bills going through the roof. But what most businesses tend to focus on is they look at their costs and they identify what's costing me the most, which is why energy will always be a bigger priority, generally speaking, than water. Now, I would argue as a sustainability professional that water from water efficiency in the long term is equally as important as the whole sort of energy and carbon agenda. But that's where businesses tend to focus is you know, how much are these different things costing me. So I guess that's part of our role is to highlight the broader scope of actions that businesses can be taking and not just be focused on energy and the carbon footprint side of things. I mean, I touched a little bit around travel. So that's obviously, there's two angles to that. There's obviously your business mileage, you as an organisation in terms of doing what you do, and then there's how your staff get to work. So there's potential to influence on that. I'm not sure I've answered the question, but
that's fine. That's fine. I think I was sort of trying to get your thoughts on that. Things like, you know, virgin material is cheaper than recycled because recycled takes more energy to sort of and carbon to in the process itself, and it's just priced. The pricing is skewed as such, and the carbon and the energy use is skewed. So if you think from a sustainability point of view, you want the recycled materials to be used, but from a carbon point of view, it might, well, maybe our economics is just broken, that it doesn't take environmental sustainability into account as much. But it's just, can you sort of highlight a couple of things that people should be looking beyond carbon and beyond energy?
I've got to kind of look at Carly for some help here because it's a really good question. Do any of the other speakers want to jump in because I'm slightly stumped at the moment? I mean, I was going to say one of the things that I certainly think is we're going to see happening increasingly over the next couple of years in terms of economics. We're increasingly going to put a much better and more accurate cost on carbon, which you know, so people will be thinking. I mean, the particular issue that you brought up, I don't think, generally speaking, the businesses that we work with would be necessarily sort of thinking about that. I think there's maybe there's kind of a strategic, you know, where you know the thinkers and the doers and the rest of us, we need to be thinking about how do we make that easy for them to understand and to kind of buy into. When you know we're working with SMEs whose focus is on the bottom line, and you know cheapest is, you know, sometimes unfortunately in their view is best. They don't really worry about some of the other things. Carly, do you got anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add. So I mentioned Blueprint, which is a project that we're working on, and that's around a circular economy. So how do we transition to a circular economy? And that looks at those kind of inputs, materials, the costings. How some of those are easier to look at from a circular perspective than others. So I think we have got some really good work that's coming through on there. And the ultimate aims, there's 3 aims of the project. One is about providing a blueprint for local authorities to look at that transition in terms of materials. The second is about upskilling, so particularly looking at social enterprises, but we're working with enterprises that take things like pallets and make things out of them, which is a really simple example, but lots more complex examples with quite innovative materials and innovative practices as well. And then the third is about people in their homes and what they do, the things they use, how to keep things in use for longer. We're looking at repair cafes, all of that kind of thing. So I think it's across a number of fronts, isn't it? And it's a complex picture, as you say, in terms of the economics of materials and how all of that works. But Blueprint's a really interesting project. I'd be really happy to share some more information on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It's all in our hands, it is all in our hands.